When I bent down to pick up the gray envelope lying right outside my rented apartment door, I never imagined that inside it would be a secret capable of tearing apart both my past and my future. A copy of a lottery ticket worth more than $20 million, with a scrawled note, "Don't let him erase you." In that moment, there was no more cold early winter wind. No more street noise, only my heart pounding wildly, as if someone had unearthed a nightmare I had tried to bury. I stood frozen for a long time, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped the paper. Why was it here, in front of my home? Who sent it, and more importantly, how did they know? Months ago, I had bought a lottery ticket with the last money in my wallet, scribbled my name in pencil, then tucked it into my nightstand drawer. The day Cole, my ex-husband, discovered the winning ticket, he never gave me a chance to keep anything. He threw me out of the house in front of our 2 children as if I had never been anything but an unnecessary shadow. Yet now that ticket, or at least proof that it had once been mine, was back in my hands, accompanied by a cryptic message. The only question echoing in my head: was this a warning, or an opportunity? I had once thought that if life ever wanted to punish me, it would do so quietly by letting everything lose meaning bit by bit, not by shoving me out of the very house I once called home. But I was wrong. Life never chooses the gentlest path. That year I was 38 years old, working night shifts as a nurse at a small suburban hospital outside Portland. 12 hours a day I stood under white lights, moving constantly between the beeping of monitors, urgent calls, and fragile breaths. When I came home, I only wanted quiet, to see my 2 children asleep in their beds, and a little warmth in a kitchen scented with coffee. But the only thing waiting for me every morning was Cole's voice, my husband, coming from the living room, hoarse from staying up late, sometimes mixed with the stale smell of beer hanging in the air. "You're late again." I took off my coat, hung it up, and tried to keep my tone light. "Night shift, Cole. I told you." "Yeah. Night shift. Always night shift." He gave a dry laugh, slouching on the sofa. "No wonder the neighbors think I'm a freeloader. They don't understand I'm biding my time." Biding his time was how Cole described the projects he never started. Every few months he'd bring home a new idea: open an auto shop, invest in real estate, even once talk about writing a book on the psychology of success. But all of it drifted away like words in cigarette smoke. I had once loved Cole for that confidence. When we first met, his smile made it easy to believe in him. I believed that if I worked hard and he had the dream, we would build something together. But over the years, those dreams turned into excuses, and every one of his failures came with a reason called someone else. "Whitney, do you know how much people out there get paid?" he once asked, his voice suddenly sharp as he looked at the paycheck I'd left on the table. "No, but I think I'm doing my part." "Your part? You think a few checks are enough to feed this whole family?" Harper, then only 9 years old, was doing homework at the corner of the table and glanced up at us. She shrank back slightly, as if even breathing might ignite her father's anger. I gestured for her to turn back, but Cole had already sighed, stood up, and poured another beer. Cole and I spoke less and less. When I got home, he was asleep. When he was awake, I was gone to work. Only on weekend nights were we forced to face each other, and usually those confrontations didn't last more than 10 minutes before he'd throw in a cutting remark. "Have you ever thought of doing something else? Something that brings in real money?" "I'm already doing real work, Cole." "No, I mean something bigger. Aren't you tired of spending your life wiping things down and listening to people complain?" I was about to head upstairs, but he added, half joking, half serious, "If I were you, I'd buy a lottery ticket. Might have better luck than working." I didn't laugh then. But that night, while washing my hands in the hospital bathroom, I caught my tired face in the mirror and remembered his words. I didn't believe in luck, but maybe deep down, I wanted to try anything for myself. The next day, on my way home, I stopped at a small convenience store. A bright yellow sign caught my eye: "Jackpot 20 million. I reached into my wallet. I had $40 left. Not enough for a week, but I still bought a lottery ticket. The cashier smiled. "Good luck, honey." I wrote my name in fine pencil on the back corner of the ticket, an old habit whenever I wanted to mark something important. I hid it in my nightstand drawer, between unpaid bills. And then, like so many small things in life, I forgot about it. Until that night, I was making dinner when I heard Cole call out from the bedroom. His voice wasn't like usual, not tired or angry but frantically excited. I ran in to find him holding the ticket, his eyes wide, his lips trembling. "Whitney, do you know what this is?" "That's the lottery ticket I bought last week." I spoke softly, hardly believing my own ears. He turned to me, his look flashing like a blade. "What did you say?" "I bought it. At the store near the hospital. Wrote my name on the back. You think people will believe a night shift nurse over me? Don't you see whose house this is, whose table this is, and whose hands are holding the ticket? That's enough. Cole, don't do this. We can split it." "Split it?" he shouted. "You don't deserve a single cent. All these years I've put up with you, listened to your nagging, watched you work. Like a machine. Now you think you get a reward?" Harper sobbed in the hallway. Liam stood in front of his sister, eyes fearful. "Dad, stop yelling." Cole snapped. "Go to your room. Both of you." I stepped forward, blocking him. "Cole, please, the kids." But before I could finish, he slammed the desk lamp to the floor. "Enough, Whitney. Get out of my house." It all happened so fast I couldn't react. He dragged my suitcase out and threw it down the steps. Clothes, shoes, even our wedding photo in its wooden frame scattered across the cement. I bent down, picking things up like a sleepwalker. Neighbors stood in their doorways, watching with eyes full of pity and curiosity. Harper cried out, and Liam clutched my hand. "Mom, don't go. Please." I walked out of that house carrying a torn suitcase, a pair of shoes soaked with rain, and a hollow ache that choked me. Behind me, Cole slammed the door, the click of the lock sounding like a full stop to 13 years of marriage. On the long empty street, I moved like someone lost. The early winter rain poured down, icy cold, but I had no strength to shield myself. I didn't know where I would go, only that I couldn't go back. I kept walking until my legs went numb, until the pain in my chest became too heavy to name. I drove through the night. The highway out of our neighborhood lay quiet in thick fog, only the steady swish of the wipers and blurred signs in the distance. On the seat beside me, the torn suitcase had burst open, a few clothes mixed with an old family photo the only thing I'd managed to grab. Near dawn, I pulled into a gas station on the outskirts to rest. Inside the car, cold mist clung to the windows. I curled up in my thin coat, watching the first light of sunrise slip through the trees. The emptiness spread like a silent fever. I had no home, no place to return to. And in that moment, all I wanted was to hear my mother's voice, even if only to hear her scold me. The mother's house sat at the end of an old street, the small front yard still planted with the lavender bushes she loved. I parked at the gate, stood for a few seconds, took a deep breath, then knocked. Moments later, the door opened. She stood there, still holding a dish towel, her face almost expressionless. "Whitney, it's me, Mom. What are you doing here at this hour?" I bit my lip. "I have nowhere else to go. Cole. He kicked me out. I need to stay a few days." "Whitney, I told you. You chose him, you live with the consequences. You made your bed, now lie in it." I knew my mother had never liked Cole, but I hadn't expected her to stay so unmoved when I was thrown out onto the street. "Mom, I don't need money. I don't need anything. Just a few days so I can figure things out." "No, honey, there's no space here. I don't want the neighbors talking." I choked on my words. "Talking about what, Mom? About me being kicked out by my husband? About you still not learning how to pick the right man?" I tried to smile, even though it felt fake. "I understand. Pretend I never came." I turned and walked away, the suitcase rolling over the cement with a scraping sound. Behind me, the door closed softly, but that single click echoed in my head like a permanent rejection. That night, I slept in my car, parked behind a supermarket. The air was skin-cutting cold, but I didn't dare keep the heater on too long for fear of running out of gas. I wrapped my coat tightly around me, rested my head on the suitcase, and watched the yellow streetlights blur through the glass. The loneliness no longer felt like fear, it felt like numbness. Everything seemed far away, even the thought of the future. On the second night, I woke up in the middle of a downpour. Rain drummed on the car roof, mixing with the sound of wind whistling through the door seams. I looked at my reflection in the window, gaunt face, dark circles under my eyes and a cold emptiness. I muttered to myself, "Whitney, what are you doing?" In my head, I heard Cole's voice, my mother's, my children crying. I shut my eyes, trying to block it all out. But instead of silence, the image of the lottery ticket surfaced, the one where I had written my name on the back in faint pencil marks only I might recognize. Now it sat in Cole's hands, along with everything that had once been mine. On the third night, as I sat in my car near the old neighborhood, there was a light knock on the window. I jumped. Outside, under the dim streetlight, stood an older, thin man with silver hair, wearing a brown sweater. I recognized him immediately, Mr. Lawson, the neighbor who had lived across from us for more than 10 years. "Mr. Lawson, what are you doing here at this hour? I figured you'd be around. I saw this car from a distance." He stepped closer, holding a worn-bound notebook tied with frayed ribbon. "You don't need to be afraid. I want to give you this." What is it?" "Open it, and you'll see." I took the notebook, its cover printed with daisies, and opened to find faded family photos. Pictures from Harper's birthday parties, camping trips, even a shot of Cole and me standing in front of the house when we'd first moved in. I touched one of the photos, feeling like someone was squeezing my heart. "Why did you keep these?" I asked, my voice thick. He smiled. "I helped Cole fix the roof once. One day he threw a pile of old albums into the trash, said he didn't need memories. I picked them up. Not out of curiosity, but because I thought someday you might. I don't know how to thank you." "No need to thank me. I hate seeing someone stripped of everything and forced to stay silent." He paused, then pulled a folded paper from between the photo pages. I'm not sure you'll want it." I unfolded it. On the paper was a photocopy of a lottery ticket, the numbers so familiar my heart nearly stopped. In the corner, faint but legible, was my handwritten pencil mark, "Whitney Harris." Where did you get this?" "Cole left it in the garage among scrap paper. I copied it. The night I heard you'd been thrown out, I slipped that copy into a gray envelope and left it at your door. I didn't sign my name, I wasn't sure how much danger you were in." "Proof?" I repeated, not fully grasping it. He nodded. "Proof that not everything is lost. Keep it. One day, you'll need it to remember you had value." Part of me wanted to tear it up, to erase the memory completely. But another part, fragile and strong, at once whispered, "Don't." Mr. Lawson gently touched my shoulder. "You don't have to say anything. Just promise me one thing." "What is it?" "When the time comes, don't let them steal your voice again." He spoke and then walked away slowly into the night, leaving me in the car with the album in my hands. I turned the pages, the dim light reflecting on my face in the window. No more tears. Only a heavy stillness. But beneath it, deep down, a small seed had awakened. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the car, listening to the rain and thinking about Mr. Lawson's words. "One day you'll need it." I didn't know when that day would be. But in the stillness of the night, with rain falling and the faint scent of lavender drifting from my mother's garden far away, I knew, maybe for the first time in my life, that I didn't want to give up anymore. I drove to Portland on a heavy early winter afternoon. Light rain tapped steadily on the windshield, as if someone were knocking on my mind, reminding me I had nowhere to go. The gas gauge hovered near empty. In the trunk sat only a few loose coins and a bag of thin clothes. I didn't know where I was headed, only that I needed to get far away from the familiar streets, from the neighbors' prying eyes, from the door that had slammed behind me. I stopped at a small lot near downtown. Neon lights from a convenience store reflected on the wet pavement. I rested my forehead on the steering wheel, eyes closed, trying to breathe. My head spun, my body exhausted, but what hurt most was the slow burn of humiliation inside me. In that moment, I thought about calling Cole, not to beg, but only to ask, "Did you ever truly love me?" But then I gave a bitter laugh. A man like him couldn't love anyone but himself. I opened my phone and scrolled through my contacts. No one to call. My mother certainly wouldn't pick up. Friends, if they could still be called, that had drifted away since my marriage. I set the phone down and stared out the window where the rain hadn't stopped. After a while, I gathered my courage, opened the browser, and typed words I'd never thought I would: shelter for abused women in Portland. The results appeared, and one line struck me: Haven Home, Center for Women and Children. Below it was a hotline number. I hesitated, my hand shaking as I dialed. On the other end came a woman's voice, low and gentle. "Hello, this is Haven Home. I'm Angela, how can I help you?" I tried to steady my voice. I was kicked out of my house. I have nowhere to go. Are you safe right now?" I looked around my old car, rain still falling, mist covering the windows. "I'm in my car. Alone. Can you drive to this address?" Angela read it slowly, her tone firm but warm. "We'll open the door for you. I'll come." By the time I arrived, the sky had turned slate gray. The iron gate swung open, light spilling from inside, warm and soft. I parked, sitting still for a few seconds before opening the door. A tall, middle-aged woman with short silver hair stood waiting on the porch. Her eyes were both steady and kind. "Whitney?" "Yes, it's me. Are you okay?" I nodded, though clearly I wasn't. Angela smiled gently, motioning for me to step inside. Inside, the house felt strangely warm. The scent of coffee drifted in the air, mingled with the soft murmur of women talking in the next room. Cream-colored walls held photos of women smiling, holding their children, or clasping hands. No slogans, no big signs apiece that made you want to sit down and breathe. Angela led me into a small room with a wooden table, a cup of hot tea, and a soft upholstered chair. "Sit down, Whitney. No one's in a hurry here." I tried to smile, but as the heat from the tea spread, my throat tightened. Everything I'd been holding in for days poured out, disordered coal shouting, my daughter's tears, my mother's cold eyes, and that ticket. I told it all, at first in fragments, then in an unstoppable stream. Angela listened without interrupting, without judging, nodding gently when I paused to catch my breath. Outside, the rain kept falling steadily on the roof. Angela clasped her hands, looked at me for a long moment, then spoke slowly. "Whitney, what you've experienced isn't emotional abuse. It's also financial abuse. And that can be protected by law." "Law? You mean I can sue him? If that ticket copy proves it was yours?" "Yes. You said you had a photocopy, right?" I suddenly remembered the album Mr. Lawson had given me. "I do. It's a copy of the ticket, with my handwriting on the back." Angela smiled softly. "Then we have a starting point. Justice isn't easy to find, but it hasn't disappeared." Her words echoed in my mind. No one had spoken to me about justice in years. I had only endured, stayed silent for my children, out of fear, believing that if I kept quiet the storm would pass. But staying quiet only made others believe they had the right to keep hurting you. Angela stood and poured more tea, her voice gentle like advice. "You can stay here as long as you need. We'll help you. Meet a lawyer, handle paperwork. But first you need rest. When a person is exhausted, even the truth is hard to see clearly." I looked around the room at the small bed with a blue blanket waiting. The faint smell of soap lingered. Rain still fell outside, but for the first time, the sound didn't make me feel alone. I took a deep breath and nodded slightly. "Thank you, Angela. I really don't know what to say." "No need to say anything," she replied, her smile soft. "Just believe that this isn't over yet." I stayed at Haven Home from that night on. In the days that followed, I gradually adjusted to the rhythm there, the simple breakfasts, the afternoon support sessions, the different stories that somehow carried the same familiar kind of pain. Every woman in that house had her own wound. Some hid it behind a smile. Others still hadn't learned how to hold the needle to stitch it back together. One morning, I saw Angela talking to a man in a suit. She called me over. "Whitney, this is Mr. Keller. He's a lawyer who specializes in cases involving financial abuse." Keller shook my hand, his gaze steady. "Angela told me a bit about your situation. I'll need to see the photocopy of the ticket and your signature, if you still have them." I took the album from my bag, opened it, and pulled out the sheet sealed in plastic. Keller studied it carefully and nodded slowly. "The handwriting matches your signature sample. If the original is still archived at the lottery office, we can verify it easily." I exhaled a long breath I felt I hadn't taken in days. You mean, I could get back what was mine? He smiled. At least a chance. And sometimes that chance is the first step toward what's right. Angela placed a warm, steady hand on my shoulder. See, Whitney. No one can take everything from you, no matter how hard they try. What's left, even if it's a faint trace, can still be the place you start over. From. I looked at the paper in my hand, the old photocopy, edges yellowed, but to me, it wasn't evidence. It was the thread connecting the woman who had been erased to the one learning how to exist again. After I left Portland, I rarely heard Cole's name anymore. But the world is strangely small. Sometimes the things you try hardest to avoid find their way back to you. One evening, while I was folding blankets in the Haven home common room, another woman called out, "Whitney, you have to see this." She handed me her phone. On the screen was a social media post. I glanced at it and froze. There was Cole, the same man who once shouted in our yard that I wasn't worth a cent, now dressed in a tailored suit, leaning against a silver sports car. Behind him stood a mansion with white pillars and a glowing pool. The caption, written in his familiar arrogant tone, read, "Hard work always pays off." Living the dream. The other photos showed fine dining, champagne parties, yachts, luxury watches, and strangers' smiling faces beside him. I stared, unsure what to feel: anger, disbelief, or simply exhaustion. Angela, standing nearby, glanced at the screen and said softly, "You don't have to look at that, Whitney. I'm not curious about him. It's strange. A man who never worked a day in his life now living as if he's never hurt anyone." In the dark, I could still see his smirk, the glass of wine in his hand, the reflection of lights on his face. I didn't know where he got the money to live like that, but I knew one thing for sure: Cole had never had the patience to work hard. If someone was funding him, there had to be something shady behind it. A few weeks later, my instinct proved right. One Monday morning, as I was making coffee in the kitchen, Angela walked in holding a local newspaper. She set it on the table, her tone calm but her eyes uneasy. "You should see this." Right on the front page was an article video about a rising entrepreneur in Portland. Cole Harris, praised for his strong entrepreneurial spirit, after partnering with an investor named Brandon Hale to launch a private investment fund. The photo showed Cole shaking Brandon's hand, both of them grinning widely. Brandon, the name struck something in me. I tried to recall, and then it came back. Years ago, when Cole was still chasing his endless business ideas, he'd partnered with an old classmate. I remembered the heated arguments in our living room. That friend was Brandon. He had lent Cole money to start a so-called future auto repair shop, but the project never happened. When Brandon demanded repayment, Cole dodged, lied, even accused him of trying to scam him. After that, they cut all contact. Now Brandon was back, but not as a friend. Looking closer at the photo, I noticed Brandon's eyes weren't entirely smiling. While Cole beamed broadly, Brandon's smirk was faint, his gaze cold, as if he were hiding a secret only he knew. Angela noticed my expression and asked, "Do you know this man?" "I've met him. A long time ago. Things didn't end well between them." Angela nodded thoughtfully. "Then maybe you don't have to worry. People like Cole eventually write their own endings." She was right, I knew. But something still unsettled me. Cole was a show-off, someone who would step on anyone to keep his place. And Brandon, if he was the same man I remembered, wasn't someone to cross lightly. In the following weeks, social media flooded with more images of Cole. Another extravagant party, this time in Las Vegas. A short video he posted, preaching his keys to success. "Don't listen to people who doubted you. Prove to them you were born to win." I turned it off before he finished. Not because it hurt, but because I realized he hadn't changed. Still using pretty words to cover the emptiness inside. One afternoon, while I was cleaning the tables after dinner, Angela passed by and said quietly, "Someone asked about you." I froze. "Who?" "He didn't give his name. Said he used to do business with Cole. Wanted to know if you were here." I told him that at Haven Home, personal information is confidential. What did he sound like? "A man, maybe around 40. Polite, but cold," Angela said, watching me closely. "He might be connected to your ex-husband." It felt like the past was finding its way back. Why would Brandon come back to work with someone who once cheated him? And why was he looking for me? The next morning, I found a small envelope in the center's mailbox, no return address. Inside was a printed photo, Cole shaking Brandon's hand at the fund's launch event, and a short handwritten note in pen. Old debts rarely forget how to collect justice. That evening, Angela sat with me on the porch bench, listening as I told her about the letter. She stayed silent, her gaze lost among the trees. When I finished, she spoke slowly. "Whitney, sometimes life sets things right without us having to fight for it. But what matters is that you're ready when it happens." I gripped the edge of the envelope, unsure what to believe. Outside, the city glowed in cold light. Somewhere out there, Cole was still laughing, still convinced he had won. But maybe he hadn't realized not everyone at his party came to celebrate. Some came to watch him fall. Angela came to find me on a damp morning, Portland wrapped in fog like dust that hadn't yet lifted. She stepped into the common room where I was wiping tables after breakfast, holding a steaming cup of coffee. "Whitney," she said, her voice calm but carrying something new. "I want you to meet someone. She might be able to help you." "Help? With what?" "With justice," she replied, setting the cup down and meeting my eyes. "Your name on that lottery ticket isn't a detail. If there's a way to prove it, you could reclaim what's rightfully yours." Ever since I'd received that envelope with the ticket copy, everything inside me had been both awakening and retreating. I didn't know whether to hope or to fear because every time I hoped, I ended up crushed again. Angela smiled gently, touching my shoulder. "I arranged a meeting with a lawyer, Monica Reed. She works on property theft and civil fraud cases. I think you should talk to her. No pressure, to understand where you stand." She drove me to downtown. Monica's office was in a renovated old building, red brick, large glass doors, and a small brass nameplate engraved, "Reed and Hartman Law Office." Monica greeted us in a beige suit, her frame neat, her eyes bright, her voice low but clear. When we shook hands, she studied me for a moment, as if measuring something beyond words. "I've heard a little from Angela," she said once we sat down. "Now, tell me in your own way every detail you remember." And I did, piece by piece. From that night when Cole found the ticket, to the shouting, to the moment he threw my belongings outside, to when I stood before that slammed door cast out of the house I had built brick by brick. I told her about Mr. Lawson, the old neighbor who gave me the photocopy, and about the anonymous envelope that had appeared at my apartment door. Monica didn't interrupt. She took notes quickly, occasionally nodding, her eyes calm with professional composure. When I finished, she opened a folder and pulled out a printed document. "You said Cole claimed the winnings at the Oregon State Lottery branch, correct?" Monica turned the paper toward me. "I reached out to a contact there. According to procedure, any winning ticket worth more than $600 is scanned and archived both front and back before payment is confirmed. If the ticket you bought had handwriting on it, that record still exists." "You mean, there might be an image of the back side?" It means that if your name appears on that ticket, even if it's written in pencil, it counts as legal evidence," she said carefully. "You can prove ownership." Angela, sitting beside me, smiled softly. "I told you, didn't I? Sometimes hope doesn't disappear, it waits for someone brave enough to look back." I clenched my hands to steady myself. "If that's true, what do I need to do?" "First, we confirm that the archive still exists. Then, if your name is indeed recorded, I'll file a motion to reopen the ownership claim. The problem is, Cole may have already moved or invested all the money. But don't worry, that's my part. Yours is to tell the truth, remember clearly, and not give up halfway." When we left the office, the rain still hadn't stopped. Angela and I walked along the sidewalk, each holding a cup of hot coffee. The smell of coffee mixed with the damp air, drifting like a small comfort. "I don't know how to thank you," I said. "Without you, I'd still think everything was over." "No need to thank me. I point the way. You're the one who decided to walk it." A few days later, Monica emailed, "Good news. The system confirmed the ticket's archive still exists. I'll request an official copy this week." After so many months living in darkness, a sliver of light had opened, fragile, but enough to make me believe again. Angela came in carrying the scent of baked bread. Any news? I turned to her, smiling. Yes. She found the record. Angela stopped, her eyes brightening. Good. Then the game has begun. Somewhere out there, Cole was still bragging under the glow of party lights, still convinced everything was in his control. But he didn't realize the thing he called victory had left a trace behind. A faint line of pencil on the back of a ticket, a name he'd once tried to erase. I no longer followed Cole, yet everything tied to him kept finding its way back, as if fate refused to let go. News about him flooded social media. People said he'd bought a lakefront mansion in Lake Oswego, hosted parties every weekend, wine flowing like water, friends circling around to praise the man who changed his life overnight. But there was one thing they didn't know: Cole hadn't slept peacefully since the lights went out. Old acquaintances said he began changing locks, installing more cameras, even doubling his fence height because he felt someone was watching. At first they thought he was paranoid, but gradually, the signs became obvious. The fear etched into his eyes, the constant glances over his shoulder at parties. One night, while music still played, his phone buzzed. On the screen appeared a message from an unknown number. You stole her life. Cole squinted, read it again and again, then deleted it. But 10 minutes later, another message arrived, this time with a photo. The front porch of the old house, where I had once stood as he threw me out. Below it, a faint line read, "Truth doesn't rot." He slammed the phone onto the table, muttering through his teeth, "Who's messing with me?" Glasses clinked, and shallow laughter echoed from his new friends, people who didn't know who he used to be. Only that he had money now. I learned later from Liam and Cole's former assistant that from then on, Cole could hardly sleep. He began doubting everyone, his friends, his partners, even his own son. Liam, 12 years old, was no longer the boy who believed every word his father said. He avoided eye contact, moved quietly, and Cole noticed the distance between them, and it drove him mad. One evening, Liam told the custody evaluator and later repeated in court that during dinner in their cavernous kitchen, Cole set his knife down and stared straight at his son. "Do you have something to say to me?" Liam paused, looked up. "No, sir." "Then why do you keep looking at me like that? Like I'm a criminal?" The boy gripped his spoon tightly, trying to keep his voice calm. "I'm not looking at you that way." Cole slammed his hand on the table. "Don't lie to me." Harper, 9 years old, flinched, tears spilling down her cheeks. Liam stood up, shielding his sister. "That's enough, Dad. Sit down." I said, "That's enough." In that moment, Cole saw himself reflected in his son's eyes, anger, but no longer fear. That look made him step back and drain his glass of wine. No one spoke again. That night, Harper sat on her bedroom floor clutching a pillow, eyes red and swollen. She was younger than she looked, but she understood more than anyone realized. I only learned about the recorder when Harper handed it to Monica before the hearing. She had kept it in her doll box, something Cole had never noticed. Inside it was nearly 4 minutes of audio. Cole shouting, my trembling voice trying to explain, the sound of objects crashing, and Harper crying, "Mom." All captured, chillingly clear. She didn't fully understand what it meant, only that it was the only way she could keep her mother close. Harper often replayed it when she missed me, pressing her ear to the tiny speaker as if she could hear my breathing through it. Meanwhile, since the anonymous messages appeared, Cole lived in constant paranoia. Every small sound startled him. He added more cameras, checked locks 3 times a night, and stared at the security monitors until morning. According to emails and meeting notes Brandon later turned over to Monica, he had confronted Cole. One afternoon, as they sat in a sleek office overlooking the Willamette River, Brandon asked, "Not sleeping well, are you?" "Someone's watching me." Brandon gave a faint smirk. "Or maybe you're the one watching yourself." Cole scowled. "I'm serious. Someone's been sending me creepy messages, saying I stole someone's life." Brandon took a sip of coffee, his tone casual. "Maybe because you did." The words hit like a slap. Cole turned, ready to argue, but Brandon's gaze was steady, almost cold. "Just kidding," he said, but that smile made Cole shiver. From that day on, Cole avoided his eyes. Yet Brandon appeared more often, calm, friendly, carefully planting trust. Cole didn't realize the man across from him was quietly studying every crack in his life, waiting for the right moment. Meanwhile, at school, Liam grew withdrawn. He didn't talk about his father, never invited friends home, avoided every question about family. Harper became more isolated too, often sitting alone, drawing closed circles her brother, and their mother while the father figure was shaded entirely in black. One night, Harper asked her brother softly, "Do you miss Mom?" "Of course I do. I can hear her in the recorder." "What recorder?" Harper hesitated, then opened the doll box and showed him the device. The boy's eyes widened as he heard their father screaming, his mother pleading, the sound of tears. "Harper, how long have you had this?" "A long time. I was afraid if I deleted it, Mom would really disappear." Liam went silent, then hugged her tightly. "You did the right thing. Don't tell Dad." She nodded. The next day, Cole called Brandon to the house, demanding he check his phone, computer, cameras, everything. "I want to know who's trying to ruin me," he snapped. Brandon smiled faintly, opening his laptop and plugging in a small device. "When you lose trust in yourself," Brandon said, "everyone around you becomes the enemy. I never meant to become anyone's example story. But sometimes when truth is buried too deep, only the light of the public can pull it out of the mud." One morning, Monica came to see me, holding a tablet, her eyes brighter than usual. "Whitney," she said, "the report is finished. It's airing this Friday night." "What report?" "The program Inside the Truth. A special episode titled Economic Violence, The Invisible Abuse. Remember the day we went to the station for filming? They've edited it, your face is hidden, and your voice adjusted slightly, but the emotion is intact." I remembered that day, the dim studio, soft light grazing my face, the mic on my collar trembling with each breath. When the reporter asked, "If you could say one thing to him, what would it be?" I had stayed silent for a long time before answering, that he can't erase me like a pencil mark. That line would now play on national television. The thought both terrified and freed me, terrified because it was so real, freed because at last, what I'd endured was no longer a secret. Angela entered the room after hearing the news. "Sometimes," she said, "to heal, we have to let the world see the wound. I don't want Cole to think I did this for revenge." Angela looked at me for a long moment. "A man like him will always think that, no matter what you say. What matters is that you know why you're doing it." Friday night, I sat in Haven Home's small living room with a few other women. Angela set up an old TV in the corner, the static hum filling the room as the channel came on. The report began with a quiet scene, an empty house, a chair knocked over, a pair of women's shoes left by the door. Then the narrator's voice came, "Violence isn't always a fist. Sometimes, it wears the face of power and money." The image shifted. A female figure sat in the dark, her face obscured, only the outline of her hair visible. My voice came through shaky, raw enough to make even me tremble. "He took everything. The money, the house, the children. But the worst thing was making me believe I was nothing without him." Then the scan of the lottery ticket appeared on screen, the faint pencil handwriting clear. "Whitney H." Someone in the room gasped. And me at that moment, it felt like I was watching my own soul being pulled back into the light. The scan lingered on screen as the narrator continued. "This man claimed the prize in his wife's place, though the ticket bears her handwritten signature. The case is now under legal review by the state of Oregon. She dared," he roared, hurling the remote at the screen, shattering it. Glass shards scattered across the tile. His friends sat frozen. One tried a nervous laugh. "Hey Cole. Relax, probably a coincidence." "Coincidence?" he shouted, his voice cracking. "She's talking about me." At the staircase, Liam stood silently, watching it all. He had heard every word. When the image of the ticket appeared on the TV, he recognized his mother's handwriting instantly. He had seen her write notes like that back home, round letters. Neat, slightly tilted to the right. Liam walked down a few steps, about to say something, but Cole turned around. "What are you looking at?" "Nothing, sir." Cole clenched his fists. "You believe what they're saying?" I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know?" "They made it all up. Your mother's doing this to humiliate me." His voice dripped with bitterness, but beneath it was a tremor of panic he couldn't hide. Then Cole slammed his hand on the table and stormed upstairs. The door slammed so hard that the picture on the wall shook. Harper, in her room, heard everything. She clutched the recorder to her chest. As for me at the shelter, I still didn't know what was happening inside that mansion. Angela sat quietly, her kind, steady gaze like that of a mother watching her child finally step out of the dark. When the broadcast ended, the anchor said a line I could never forget. Financial abuse often leaves no bruises, but it can strip away dignity, confidence, and a person's very identity. Whitney, the woman in this story, has decided not to let that happen again. It was the first time I'd heard my name spoken aloud, not by someone trying to hurt me. On the morning of the first hearing, Portland was lightly draped in rain. The sky was a dull, milky white, muting every sound. I sat in the car with Monica, gripping a paper cup of cold coffee. The stale aroma rose up, mixing with the plastic scent of the seats, reminding me of old mornings when I rushed to early shifts while Cole slept soundly on the couch, never once walking me to the door. Monica tilted her head toward me. "Ready?" I smiled faintly. "No one ever is when you ask that." "Then let's call today a rehearsal." We walked into the courthouse. The hallway was wide, the marble floor echoing with footsteps. At the end of the row of benches stood Cole, black suit, navy tie, still holding that air of control, though his face was taut. When our eyes met, he smirked slightly, that familiar half-smile, not pride this time, but defense. Behind him stood his attorney, a stocky middle-aged man with a hardened face. I sat across the aisle beside Monica, whose calm, measured tone carried the quiet authority of someone long accustomed to confronting people who treated truth as a bargaining chip. When the clerk read the case title, my heartbeat quickened. Whitney Harris vs. Cole Harris, petition for ownership reclamation. Each word landed like a soft tap against my past. I took a deep breath and lifted my head. Cole's lawyer began with a smooth, practiced speech full of distortion, claiming Cole was the sole purchaser of the ticket, that the respondent is merely trying to claim what was never hers. I gripped the edge of my sleeve as he spoke. Hearing Cole's low voice behind him, "She didn't buy anything. I have the receipt. I paid for it." When Monica spoke, her tone was low but resolute. "Your Honor, my client is not here to fight over a lottery ticket. She is here to assert that her name was erased both literally and figuratively." She opened her folder and pulled out a clear plastic sleeve. Inside was the scanned image of the winning ticket. The large courtroom screen immediately displayed it. On the back, faint but unmistakable, was the pencil handwriting, "Whitney H." I heard murmurs ripple through the room. Cole leaned forward, his face draining of color, his lips tightening. Monica spoke slowly. "According to the Oregon Lottery Commission's procedure, all winning tickets are scanned on both sides. This file was provided by the commission itself. Handwritten marks, even in pencil, count as identifying evidence. And here, we see the name Whitney Harris." Cole's lawyer stood to object, but the judge raised a hand. "Objection noted. Proceed." Monica nodded and gestured to the first witness, Mr. Lawson, our former neighbor. He looked older than when I last saw him, hair grayer, hands trembling slightly, but his eyes were still kind. When he took the stand, I instinctively stood and bowed my head. He nodded back with a gentle smile. The judge asked how he knew us. "I lived next door to them for 12 years, Your Honor. I saw things, heard things I probably shouldn't have. But some things are wrong to stay silent about." He recounted that night, the night Cole discovered the ticket. His voice wavered with emotion. "I was watering my plants when I heard shouting. I saw Whitney's belongings thrown out, suitcases, clothes everywhere. She was crying, and he was yelling, 'This money is mine. You don't deserve a cent.' I remember it clear as day. His voice was so loud my dog barked for hours." Cole lowered his head, fists tight. Monica didn't need to say another word. Lawson's testimony spoke for itself. When he stepped down, I rose and whispered, "Thank you." He smiled. "I couldn't help you back then. Maybe I can now." Then Monica called me to the properments foreign stand. My heart was steadier than I expected. "I'm not here for money. I want my children to know their mother didn't lie." Cole's lawyer stood again to object, but froze when Monica said, Your Honor. We have one additional piece of evidence submitted this morning. I looked at her, surprised. Monica opened her briefcase and handed a small USB drive to the clerk. This is an anonymous recording sent to my office 2 days ago. Its source has been verified. The voice belongs to Mr. Cole Harris. Cole whipped around, eyes wide. What? No, she's making this up. The judge called for order. A technician pressed play. The sound filled the courtroom. Cole's voice, sharp, familiar, cutting through every word. This ticket is mine. She bought nothing. Not one thing in this house is hers. I could hear my own breath echoing. Monica looked directly at the judge, calm but firm. We don't know who sent this recording, but clearly, it came from someone who understood exactly what happened in that house. Cole hung his head, sweat glistening on his forehead. His lawyer stammered. The audio could have been edited. The judge interrupted. We'll have a forensic review later. But for now, this evidence is sufficient to question the plaintiff's testimony. From the back row, I caught a glimpse of a small figure stepping into the hallway beside a blonde woman, Harper, in a blue coat, clutching a tiny recorder. I knew it was my daughter. Monica saw it too and smiled faintly. Outside, Portland's rain kept falling, soft but unrelenting. Through the courtroom window, the sky stretched gray and endless, but beneath that rain, I felt something I hadn't in years: quiet in my mind. The air inside the courtroom was thick enough to taste. After the recording, silence lingered until even the sound of a pen dropping was sharp. Cole sat hunched, pale, while his lawyer shuffled through scattered papers as if more documents could patch a hole widening by the second. Everything unfolded before me in slow motion, like a film rewinding. Not because I was gloating, but because I knew this was only the beginning. Truth always has layers, and the last one usually comes from where no one expects. The judge tapped the gavel, voice calm. We will proceed with the plaintiff's supplemental witness. The back doors opened. Footsteps echoed across the tiles. I turned and saw Brandon Hale walk in. He looked nothing like the man I'd seen in photos online. Gone was the flashy suit, gone the arrogance. He moved slowly, holding a thick folder, face composed, eyes cold. The judge asked, "State your name and reason for appearing." Brandon bowed slightly, voice rough but steady. "My name is Brandon Hale. I was Mr. Cole Harris's financial partner. I'm here to submit evidence that he voluntarily transferred most of his winnings into a fund under my management." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Monica leaned toward me, whispering for calm. Brandon stepped to the witness table, placed the folder down, and met Cole's gaze. "Do you remember the day you called me after you got the money?" Cole said nothing. "You said you wanted to invest to double your fortune. I warned you, but you were too eager. You signed the agreement, granting me control of the capital. And now," he pulled out a copy of the contract and held it up. "Here's your signature, Cole Harris." Cole's attorney snatched it, flipping through the pages. The papers were clear, notarized, dated, official. All eyes turned to Cole, and for the first time, I saw real fear on his face. "No. He set me up," Cole shouted, jumping to his feet. "I didn't know what he did. I was betrayed." Brandon shrugged, his calm voice steady, as if he had been waiting for this moment a long time. "You think I forgot what you did years ago? You took the money I invested and ran, left me with the debt. I told you one day, you'd write your own sentence. I helped you sign it faster." I looked at Monica. She understood exactly what that meant. Brandon was the final piece in the game Cole thought he controlled. The judge motioned for the clerk to collect the documents. Brandon stepped down, leaving one last line behind. "You once said money is power. Maybe now you understand it's also a cage." Cole collapsed into his chair, hands clutching his head. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his lips trembling. "I was tricked. I've got nothing left." His lawyer tried to calm him. "We'll file an appeal." "Appeal what? With what money?" "He took everything," Cole roared, his voice echoing through the courtroom. "I lost it all because of her." Monica gently placed a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Don't let him drag you back into his darkness." Cole kept shouting, but his words began to crumble into ragged, hoarse sounds. Court officers approached, asking him to calm down. He struggled, slammed his hand on the table, then dropped his head, gasping for breath. The judge surveyed the room, voice firm. This hearing will recess for review of all financial records. Newly submitted evidence will be examined. Court will reconvene next week. Cole turned toward me, his gaze a mixture of rage and despair. But what caught my breath was the small figure behind him, Harper. She stood in the hallway, holding her brother's hand tightly. When our eyes met, she gave a small nod, a silent, profound greeting. I knew she didn't hate me, nor defend her father. She was a child watching the world collapse, learning how to stand again in its ashes. Brandon passed by, pausing beside me. His face was composed, but there was a faint look of long overdue peace in his eyes. I didn't do this for you, he said quietly. I did it for myself. But if it helps you end the nightmare, then let's call our debt even. That morning, as my shoes touched the cold stone steps outside the Multnomah County Courthouse, it felt like Portland was holding its breath. The sun hadn't fully risen, mist draped over the trees in the parking lot, blurring everything like a fading dream. Monica walked beside me, her leather briefcase clutched tight. The courtroom smelled the same: paper, polished wood, filtered light slipping through tall windows. Everyone seemed to know how the verdict would fall, but no one said it aloud. Some truths don't need prediction, they need to be witnessed. Cole sat at the other table, white shirt, loosened tie, eyes vacant. The swagger was gone. Beside him, his weary lawyer looked unshaven and defeated. I sat quietly in my cream coat, feeling lighter than before, not because I was confident, but because I knew there was nothing left to lose. The judge entered. The gavel struck 3 times, sharp and final. This court is now in session for the case of Whitney Harris versus Cole Harris, concerning property misappropriation and economic abuse. Monica stood and presented everything: the lottery ticket, the scanned evidence, the witness statements, Harper's recording, and the contract Brandon submitted. One by one, each fragment fit perfectly into place. The judge looked up, his tone cold but clear. He signed, he transferred, and he expelled his wife and 2 children from their home. The law does not judge motives. We judge actions. Cole bowed his head, shoulders trembling. And then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The entire room fell silent as the judge read the ruling. Based on all submitted evidence and testimony, this court finds Cole Harris guilty of property misappropriation and economic abuse. A permanent restraining order will be enacted against Mr. Harris concerning Whitney Harris and their 2 children. Full legal and physical custody is granted to Mrs. Harris. All unlawfully seized assets will be returned and redistributed per Oregon marital and family law. The back door creaked open. Liam entered with a social worker, wearing a blue shirt, hair tousled, eyes cautious. I would never forget that look, the look of a child who once saw his father throw his mother out into the rain. The judge nodded, signaling the boy could approach. Liam walked toward me. I didn't turn to look at Cole, but through the reflection on the opposite glass, I saw him sitting motionless. His lips moved slightly, maybe an apology, maybe regret, but for me it was already too far gone. Monica gathered her papers and said softly, "You've already survived the worst, Whitney. All that's left now is to live." I took my son's hand, squeezing it gently, a quiet promise that we would begin again, this time in peace. In the distance, Cole was escorted from the courthouse. No handcuffs, no force, just a man stripped of everything, even his pride. He looked back once, eyes empty, then lowered his head and walked on. I didn't watch for long. Some chapters should only be read once. Ahead of me lay a new road, not grand, not shining, but real. Above Portland's gray sky, sunlight broke through the clouds, glinting softly across the swaying trees. Spring. The following year. Portland's rain had softened, the sky was turning blue, and the trees outside the community center where I stood had begun to bloom. A new sign hung by the entrance: Harbor Light Foundation, for women rebuilding. That name wasn't chosen by chance. Harbor, a place to return to after the storm. Light, the first thing you see when you step out of the dark. I stood in a bright room, surrounded by a circle of women. Different ages, different voices, but the same look in their eyes, the look of those who had once been broken. Angela sat in the corner, still the gentle guide she'd always been, and Monica, now the foundation's legal advisor, stood beside me, holding a problem. stack of folders. Today was Harbor Light's first official support session. It wasn't a shelter anymore, it was where women began again, not from zero, but from the belief that they still mattered. A curly-haired woman in her 50s, voice raspy from tears, shared how her husband had taken control of every bank account, forcing her to ask permission to buy things for their children. A younger woman, barely 26, whispered, "I thought staying silent would keep my family together. But the more I stayed quiet, the more I disappeared." I looked around, the faces showed empathy, but also fear. The same kind I once carried. I stepped forward, took her hand, and turned to the group. "Silence doesn't protect," I said slowly. "It erases you." After the session, as the others left, I stayed behind to clean the tables with Monica. She set down her files and said, "You know, Whitney, what I admire most about you isn't that you won your case. It's that you turned pain into purpose." I smiled softly. "If I hadn't, I'd still be a shadow in that old house." Monica placed a hand on my shoulder. "And now you're the light in this room." That afternoon I drove the kids to the Oregon coast. Harper rested her head on Liam's shoulder in the back seat. He'd grown so fast I had to remind myself he wasn't the 12-year-old who quietly helped me pack the night we fled. The coastal road stretched wide, the air carrying salt and damp grass. By the time we arrived, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in soft amber. Harper ran ahead, barefoot in the sand, laughter carried by the wind. Liam walked slower, tossing seashells into the waves. I followed between them, feeling both familiar and new, as if the world had finally opened its arms to me again. "Mom," Harper called out, her voice bright, "do you think losing everything was the only way to find us again?" That question, simple, innocent, stilled my heart. I looked at her, hair glowing in the fading sun, eyes reflecting the ocean's blue. We walked on, waves brushing our feet, the cold water reminding me I was still alive. The wind picked up, carrying the roar of waves crashing against distant cliffs. I looked out at the horizon where the sun sank into the sea, gold melting into deep blue, fading into violet calm. I remembered everything, the night I was thrown out, the nights I slept in my car, Mr. Lawson's trembling hands giving me those old photos, Monica's look when we found the first piece of evidence, Harper's small arms around me in court. All of it returned, not sharp anymore, but gentle, like scenes from an old film. "Mom?" Harper said softly. I knelt down, brushing her hair back, smiling. "Maybe. Sometimes you have to lose everything to know what's truly worth keeping." "Mom, look!" Liam shouted. He held up a spiral shell, sunlight glinting off it like a tiny mirror. I laughed, a sound I hadn't made in years. We sat together on the shore, watching waves rise and fall, erasing our footprints. Harper picked up a stick and wrote in the sand, "We found home." Above us, the last light faded. Our shadows stretched across the sand, merging into one. The tide came in again, washing over the words, leaving only a faint shimmer on the water's surface. In the distance, the ocean stretched endlessly. What do you think of Whitney's journey, a woman who lost everything, yet somehow found herself among the ruins? Perhaps true strength only appears when there's nothing left to cling to. Every choice, every scar, led her to a new version of herself, calmer, stronger, and certain that quiet surrender is never the price of love. And if it were you, would you dare to speak the truth, even knowing it could change everything? Share your thoughts below. Every story has more than one side, and maybe your words could bring comfort to someone silently enduring what Whitney once did. Don't forget to follow the channel for more stories about family, love, and resilience, where every wound can become light, and every woman deserves to be heard, to live a life that is truly her own.